Hey folks, Brother Nero here. Just wanted to let you know we're here to do this virtual outreach again. And thanks for joining me, Julia. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm just getting ready for a lot of stuff going on this week, but other than that, I'm okay. So I guess we should get into it. So what I wanted to do is just go over the basics like we always do. For those of you who may not know what this is, we do a virtual outreach every other weekend on Sunday, and we do it at 4:30 Central. Sometimes we're a few minutes late, sometimes we're on time, but every once in a while we're late. So let me just go over the basics. Um, this is an introductory lecture that we give every 2 weeks. It's basically the same lecture that we give every 2 weeks, where we answer basic questions that we receive from people about Shadow Path Diabolism, about diabolism in general, and about Devil's Mark Ministries. Now, the reason we go over the same lecture every week is because we want to give everybody a chance to talk to us live or ask questions that might come up or might arise. And so we basically go over the basic lecture to start out for anybody who might be new. So let me go into that. Shadow Path Diabolism is a polytheistic religion founded by me as an alternative to the standard kind of Satanism, because everybody nitpicks about Satanism. They kind of go, well, this is Satanism, that's Satanism. And if you believe this, then you're not a Satanist. If you believe in the devil, you're not a Satanist. If you believe in praying, you're not a Satanist. Well, we don't hold to the idea that LaVey created Satanism, because he didn't. And so we don't believe that the Church of Satan or the Satanic Temple or anyone else should tell anyone how they should worship Satan. So the way I got around that is by creating my own tradition of Satanism, which is Shadow Path Diabolism. Shadow Path Diabolism is basically a polytheistic, nature-based religion that would be best described as a combination of devil worship, ancient paganism, and traditional witchcraft. That's the best way to put it, the easiest way to describe it. And we basically worship Satan as the chief deity of our pantheon. We acknowledge the other demons as gods in their own right, being worthy of worship. That's why we call them the demonic gods instead of calling them demons, because we feel that the term demon doesn't give them the credit and the respect that they deserve. So that's the basics of Shadow Path Diabolism. I guess the other thing I would say is that we do not believe it's right or left hand path either, because like nature, there is no such thing as good and evil per se. I mean, nature is just what it is. Some things can be perceived as evil, some things can be perceived as good, depending on who's looking at the circumstances. So we don't use terms like right and left hand path in our tradition, because we believe that's just a way for people to gatekeep and basically try to control everything. We believe that each individual diabolist has to define their own moral code based on their relationship with Satan and the demons themselves. That's the biggest thing, um, to keep in mind. Now, that being said, I guess we can get into the first questions. Are you ready with the first question, uh, Julia?
I am indeed. So I think you've given a nice explanation for what Shadow Path Diabolism is. I think the first question that we can address, as we usually do, is what is diabolism in general and how it differs from the term Satanism. And to some people, they are quite interchangeable from my understanding of it. And diabolism is basically more of it, just basically means devil worship. And I know that some people would argue that Satanism is not devil worship, but this basically is more clear than the term Satanism, which has been kind of corrupted and co-opted.
Yeah, diabolism is just a generic term for religious worship of the devil or devils, and it can refer to any tradition. It's not tradition dependent, and that's a very important thing to point out, because a lot of atheistic Satanists right now are trying to own every term related to Satanism and say that they kind of own it and they're the official spokespeople for, Satanism. So what I did was I looked up the term diabolism, and it just basically means the religious worship of the devil or devils. And so people can't say, well, it means atheism. No, it doesn't. It only has one meaning, and that's the religious worship of the devil or devils. So that's why we decided to start using that term instead of Satanism, because it's very hard to confuse what it means. And not many people use it that much anymore. And I've noticed a lot more people starting to use it since I started using it 2 years ago. Um, so I guess people are starting to realize that is a kind of a way to differentiate yourself from the standard Satanist. Now, Shadow Path Diabolism, the reason that we call it that is, like I said, we don't really think of it as black or white. We think of it as kind of a center path down the middle, because the demons don't really have, they're not immoral, they're more amoral. They're indifferent towards human morality because they're such ancient spirits that they don't have the same morality we do. They're not confined by our time and our place and our modern sensibilities. They understand that we have limitations and our society has certain moral codes, but they're not bound by them. So I like to say that the spirits are not immoral, they're amoral, they're indifferent towards human morality, at least in their world. So that's kind of the way we look at it. So that's why our tradition reflects kind of a in between, not really left hand or right hand path. As we say, Satan's a god of knowledge and wisdom, but he's also a god of the material world. So we believe in working with both hands, you know, and working right hand and left hand path in our religion. That's the other thing I want to mention right now too, is that we are a religious organization. We are not a magical organization. We focus on the religious worship of the demons and Satan, and magic is just a tool that we use to enhance our religious worship. It is not the be all and end all of why we're here. Um, and also, we tend to use more folk magic and more lower forms of magic than higher ceremonial magic. And even when we do use higher forms of ceremonial magic, I would say that we try to keep it religious. We try to keep a religious feel to it. Um, so let's say if we were going to do something like, I don't know, Goetia ritual, we would always adapt it in such a way that it shows proper respect to Satan and the demons. We would never call on them using the Hebrew names of God or anything like that. We would adapt it to the best of our ability. But again, that's something that's harder said than done, because with Goetia, what I've seen a lot of people do when they have written books on this subject is they'll just kind of replace, the names of Jehovah with names of Satan, and that's not really how you adjust Goetia. You would have to know the meaning and the symbolism of every part of that ritual to know how to change it to make it satanic and make it still function properly. At least that's what most people will tell you that do it. That it's more than just changing a few names here or there. That's why books written by demonologists that talk about Goetia are probably not very useful, because all they really do is change a few names and change the ritual just slightly. So it doesn't really work very well. But anyway, getting off that subject, going to the next question. You got the next question for me,
I
Julie?
do, absolutely. The next question that we have on the list is, who are the demonic gods? Which I think is, it's, as you said before, it's we believe that demonic gods were gods in their own right. Satan and demonic gods were gods in their own right before the advent of Christianity, or the popularization of Christianity. And they are the spirits that basically we work with. They are the demonic gods in general are, it to some, there's a pantheon that serves Satan, and basically it's who that pantheon actually is depends on the individual belief, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, to us, the demonic gods can consist of obviously the Goetia demons and all that stuff, and other demons that you see in the grimoires in the Solomonic tradition, but it's also some of the pagan deities. For example, Astaroth can be seen as both male and female, depending on who you ask the practitioner. And Some of them believe that the demons are asexual, which makes sense if you think about the fact that demons are basically in their truest form are probably more spiritual energy than anything else, and they can take on any form they wish. So if they decide to come to you as an animal or female or male, it's not because they have a particular sex. I don't think, based on my experience, it's just whatever they want to be. They might have a particular gender they prefer or a particular way of appearing that they prefer, but they're not bound to that because they're spiritual entities. So they can take on whatever shape they want to. I also might add something else. I've been doing a lot of study into the jinn, into Arabic views of the jinn, and I'm convinced that when they talk about the evil jinn or the vengeful jinn, they're talking about the Goetia spirits because they there are so many similarities between the spirits of the Goetia and the jinn as they're described in like some of the folklore. So I'm convinced that we're talking about the same spirits, just a different name for them. That's just a little interesting aside. But so so our pantheon consists of demons and pagan deities and stuff like that because we believe that many of the demons were worshipped long before Christianity came along. And by the way, just as a little another aside, for me personally, when I founded this, I don't care whether Satan's a fallen angel or a primordial God or whatever. To me, he's my God, regardless of whatever he is. So it doesn't matter to me whether he's the Christian devil or something entirely different. He's my God, and that's the be all and end all of it to me. And I promise to serve him till the end for eternity. And that's all that really matters to me. It doesn't matter to me what his origins are. You know, that's just my position. Some people have a different view. But anyway, can we go on to the next question, Julia?
Yeah. Yeah, likewise. And also, I would agree with you with that. It ultimately, if you're devoted to this, ultimately, it doesn't really matter. I mean, nobody really knows for sure who these spirits are, like, unless you've, spoken to them at length. You won't know the entirety of who they are. It's just accepting them however they might be, which I have no problem with. Next question on the list is, do you worship evil? And in a word, no. I think most diabolists and Satanists would just say no to this question, because the primary principles of most forms of Satanism, even non-theistic Satanism, about free will, personal sovereignty, personal pride, and for theists, honoring your gods with those principles that you feel that they represent.
Yeah,
And that's
I,
it's not
I
about it's not about evil or darkness, even though the darker sides are a part of it.
yeah, I think I would even go a step further and say that if you're defining the devil by within Christian terms, by Christian terms, I would say that you could classify him as evil, but I don't really see him that way. I see him as a force of nature, as a being that is both capable of light and darkness, just like human beings are capable of doing good or evil. It depends on his will and the circumstances. But generally speaking, I don't see Satan as inherently evil. I think he's been mischaracterized by Christianity. And I think, as I've said before, the demons are not immoral, they're amoral, or they're indifferent to human morality because of them being ancient spirits. But the idea that Satan's out there to destroy mankind and to bring him down and stuff, that's a bunch of nonsense created by Christians that have never had any contact with him. And I'm also convinced, by the way, I just want to say this while I'm thinking about this. I'm convinced that very few Christians have ever had legitimate contact with demons, because if they had any legitimate contact with them, they would know more about them, but they know nothing. They know nothing about demonic spirits. They only know what the scriptures tell them. And that's proof that they've never encountered them in any way. So they're not people that are capable of giving you an accurate description of what demonic spirits are like, regardless of what they say. Anyway, can you go on to the next question?
Yeah. Yeah, and I just wanted to say as well, part of the reason I think that, well, some of the reasons why the devil is considered evil or negative in Christianity is partially because they need a scapegoat for negativity in the world that is not the Christian God. And they also, a lot of the things that we see the devil as standing for, the worldly and acceptance of human nature and sexuality, and yes, I've just seen this comment. Absolutely, it's a tool of control, to create this thing that people can fear and unite against. But also the things that the devil stands for are things that Christianity criminalizes, and they make into sins because it's standard cult behavior. It's easier to control people when you put these arbitrary rules in place, and then you have the threat of eternal damnation for breaking those rules hanging over their head. And that's kind of essentially the playbook for religious control. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons why they have this figure of the devil, the tormentor of souls, because they need some sort of scapegoat for people to fear in order to maintain that control.
I
Yeah.
had a I don't know if many of you know this, but I wasn't raised in a Christian household. I wasn't raised um, to believe in Satan. In fact, when I was young, my parents were not deeply religious, so I wasn't made to go to church, and I wasn't brought up in a Christian household. But my dad became a born again Christian after he found out I was a Satanist. After I turned like about, I think it was about 17 or 18, and he went full on evangelist on me. And one of the things that even he admitted, he said what made him convert to Christianity is that he felt he was afraid of burning in hell. So if you think about it, if people didn't have the belief that there was a hell waiting for them if they don't do everything Christianity says, nobody would be in church. The Muslims wouldn't be in mosque either if they didn't believe in hell. Nobody would want to be there. Church is not exciting. The devil is far more exciting. And there would be more Satanists if people weren't afraid of damnation. So the Christianity has done a great job of convincing everybody, oh, you don't want to listen to anybody like the devil because that'll be the end of you. So I think it's ridiculous how much Christianity has brainwashed people and taught them to fear things. But anyway, next question.
Yes, absolutely. So the next question that we have on the list is, what are your policies regarding children? And we were just actually talking about this earlier today. We, because we believe in that individual sovereignty, we believe that that applies to everyone, including children, and we believe that Satanism, diabolism is a path that you have to choose. You are called to it. It's not something that you're converted to. It's something that you're drawn to yourself, and as such, we don't approve of baptizing children, promising them to the religion, or raising them to feel that because their parents follow it, they have to follow it too. If they're drawn to it on their own at an older age and they want to be baptized into it or follow it in general themselves, then that's fine. But we don't believe that it should be forced on them. And we believe you can ask for a blessing for your children when they're born, but not necessarily promise them to the gods. That's wrong to do that before they've made the choice themselves.
Yeah. Um, as I was mentioning this morning when we were speaking to someone, I said, we've had people, or I've had people ask me, can you do a baptism on my child? And the answer is always no. We can do a blessing to ask Satan for protection for your child or to watch out for your child, but we cannot offer baptism to someone because honestly, um, that's wrong. The child has to have the ability to understand what they're committing to. um, you know they have to understand the commitment that they're making. You can't make that for them. That's a connection they have to make between them and Satan, and if they're not old enough to understand that, then they can't be baptized. We believe that Satan would never accept people who aren't doing it of their own free will. They can't be coerced, and that's one of the reasons why the satanic panic, it's so ridiculous. And the whole idea of like Michelle Remembers or Satan's Underground, those ideas of kids being forced to worship Satan and sacrifice things to the demons and all that nonsense the Christians believe in is ridiculous because we would never do that, you know?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And a lot of, I mean, I know there are bad actors out there. There are people who do horrible things in the name of, I mean, there are people who do horrible things in the name of every single religion that's ever existed. No matter where you are, what culture you're in, people will use things like that as an excuse to do horrible things. But people who actually believe in the principles that Satan stands for would consider the things like satanic ritual abuse of anyone, but particularly children, to be unacceptable, because that's just not what we stand for. You don't subjugate others and bend them to your, it's a silly word, but tyranny. I can't think of any better word to describe it than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing that's really interesting is that I've talked to people about this too, and this is good advice for anyone. If you're a parent, if you're a satanic parent and you have children that are showing an interest in Satanism, don't assume that it's a genuine interest in Satanism. It may be that they're trying to show an interest in what you're interested in the hopes of getting your attention because you're not giving them enough attention. Uh, with um, with your family time. So don't assume that it's a genuine belief in Satan. Make sure you give them proper attention, and then if the kid still wants to be involved in Satanism, you can expose them to it. You can um, show them the religion, but you shouldn't force it down their throat. You know. Go ahead, Julia.
Yes,
Next question.
absolutely. Yes, no, absolutely. And to address this comment here, and yes, absolutely. It seems that in a lot of religions, the things that are done towards children do go kind of unacknowledged or swept under the rug. And with other religions, again, it's this sort of, you need something to fear, you need something to rally against, so they'll point the finger and go, ooh, look at these guys, they put children on the altar and sacrifice them and do all sorts of horrible things to them. Meanwhile, let's not talk about the things that are going on in the Vatican.
Yeah. Okay. You ready for the next question?
Yes, absolutely. So the next question we have is kind of related. Isn't this just reverse Christianity? And as far as Shadow Path Diabolism, no, absolutely not. And for a lot of forms of diabolism and Satanism, no, absolutely not. There can be aspects of blasphemy, and to a lot of people, Satan as a figure is primarily the adversary, is in the Christian sense, but that's not the whole story. It's not just this flipping of Christianity where that's all there is. It's not just to cock snook at Christianity. It's an actual separate belief system which has its own identity and its own practices that don't just involve blasphemy and inverting Christian rights or Abrahamic rights of what have you.
Yeah, I think something else that you have to teach young Satanists is that Satanism has to be its own thing. You have to have your own rights, your own observances, your own reasons for believing in the religion. It can't just be to rebel against something else. Otherwise, it gets very old, and it just doesn't have any spiritual value um, if it's all about rebelling against someone else. I think the critical thing is to make sure that you have your own holidays, your own traditions, your own reasons for approaching things the way that you do, and it's got to be out of devotion for Satan himself and the demonic gods, the other demons. It can't just be rebellion against Christianity. Like, for example, when we do rituals, we almost always put some statement that says, you know, that is anti-Christian, but that's just to reaffirm that we are the enemies of Christianity. We think it's a vile religion. We think it's a religion of enslavement, and we want everybody to know that we make public statements to the fact that we reject the Abrahamic religious traditions. But but it's only a small portion of what we do. Most of our rituals are focused on giving praise and honor to the demons themselves. But also, if it's going to be a ritual where we know the public is going to come, or if it's going to be a ritual we might invite the public to, like say a private mass or something, we want to make sure that we address every aspect of Satanism so that the audience or the congregation watching can understand what we believe and the different levels that we've dedicated ourselves to, if that makes sense. So we might have a blasphemous section of a mass, say, but we wouldn't dedicate a mass entirely to blasphemy and shadow path diabolism, or at least rarely. If that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. You want to go to the next question?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I want to say hello to everybody in the comments. Thank you for joining in. And just to reiterate, we'll go through a preset list of questions that we have that we'll go through at each one of these virtual outreaches. But you are always welcome to put your own questions into the comments. And once we get to the end of the preset list, we'll address comments that have been posted to us, and you're always welcome to chime in with your own contributions to the discussion, and we will try and put those up on screen and address them as they come in. And if we miss one from you, please don't be offended. We're keeping up with them as they come in. So next question is Shadow Path Diabolism a form of paganism? And the answer is essentially yes. It fits the definition. It's if you define paganism as polytheistic, earth-based, kind of worldly based, that follows some sort of seasonal or just being in more involved with the worldly rather than just focusing on the spiritual, and a form of religion that kind of involves more esoteric things like magic or witchcraft, then yeah, Shadow Path Diabolism is definitely it can be considered a pagan religion. And how much it's considered a pagan religion kind of depends on the individual person's practice. But as a whole, since we believe that the gods were gods in their own right before Christianity became popular, it follows then that at some point in their history, they were worshipped as pagan gods.
Yeah, and like you said, it depends on the individual practitioner. Like for some people in the ministry, they lean more towards the pagan side of things. So their personal rituals reflect a more pagan approach to worshiping Satan. Um, then there's other people who come to it from a more devil worship, medieval devil worship sort of approach. So their rituals reflect the more traditional medieval devil worship type of imagery. And in Shadow Path Diabolism, we try to honor people's individuality by telling people, look, in your personal rituals, practice however you feel is most appropriate. Now, when we do group rituals or when we do ministry specific rituals, we all have a kind of a universal understanding, like the mass would obviously, if we want to keep the current, the magical and spiritual current consistent, then let's say a chapter of the ministry, all of them would have to perform the same mass. But when it comes to your personal practice, you have the freedom to, change it up or do it in whatever way feels right to you. But when we're doing public rituals where we share a common interest, then we have to have common rituals. So that unifies us. Because if you don't have common rituals to bring you together, then you're not really a tradition. You're just kind of a bunch of people kind of standing around, worshiping Satan separately, but together. If that makes sense. So yeah, the getting back to the point, it varies depending on the person. Like for example, our Mo, one of our members, he honors Satan more as a pan sort of cartoonist figure. So his rituals tend to be more towards the pagan spectrum, whereas Julia and myself, we're very much kind of focused on the more medieval approach. So when you put all that together, you get kind of this mixture of philosophies coming together. That makes sense. Okay, I'm finished now.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that while even that, so you're never going to meet two diabolists, Satanists, what have you, who practice exactly the same way. And the thing about Shadow Path Diabolism and the people who are involved with the ministry is that everybody has a different relationship with the spirits, right? But our relationships with the spirits and our personal practices and our group practices are, we agree on the specific practice in it enough that we can practice together, and it doesn't conflict with our own personal practices. And I think that's important. You just have to find, if you're looking for a group, you have to find some people whose relationship to the spirits are similar enough to your own that you can practice with them. And I think that will look differently for everybody, honestly.
Yeah, if you're looking for a group to be the perfect match for you, it's probably not going to happen. I mean, I've been looking for the perfect group for my entire life, and I had to create my own to even come close to what was right for me, you know? And even that, I would have to say I don't it's not perfect because I have people that have different beliefs than I do. So I have to kind of compromise a little bit in order to work with other diverse people. So even within my own ministry, I can't fully practice the way I want to unless I'm practicing privately and not representing Satan as a public figure. So so that's just the way it is. Your personal beliefs and your personal practices are just that, personal practices. By the way, just keep asking your questions and we will answer them at the end of this session. Okay, we'll do a question and answer. I know we keep forgetting to mention that, and I think some people are kind of waiting for us to answer questions, but we will answer them at the end. Okay, let's go ahead and go on, Julia, please.
Okay, so next question is, aren't satanic religions just cults? I usually get on a soapbox about this one, so I will keep it simple and say, no, absolutely not. Cult behavior is something that involves a form of emotional and psychological control over their members, bringing people in who are in need of community and who are vulnerable, and then using that to secure worship of a principle, or quite often the cult leader specifically, and use the threat of whatever, hellfire, losing salvation, possibly physical violence, to keep people within that. And that is a violation of some of the deepest and most sacred principles of diabolism and Satanism, of that free will, that individual sovereignty that we've mentioned. And while there are satanic groups out there that are absolutely cult-like, and you can find groups that are very well known that many people do consider to be cults, at the risk of doing some no true Scotsman stuff, I would hazard to say that I wouldn't really call those terribly satanic, because they violate those principles that are very sacred and I think are integral to the demonic gods, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, I think the old saying goes, it's not how people treat you when you join a group, it's how they treat you when you decide to leave that determines whether they're a cult or not. Because anybody's willing to welcome you when you're a newcomer and they like you, but when you do something they don't like, how do they treat you when you leave? Um, we've had people come and go here and have no problem with that. We've had people say, "I'm going to back off for a while because I'm not sure, this is the right path for me," and then they come back and work with us again. We've had that happen, and we have no problem with that. And if it's a religious group, and if your organization is a religious group, they should not have any problem with you coming and going and trying to figure out your path. It's if they start to tell you, well, if you leave, we're going to excommunicate you and we're not going to speak to you and we're going to shun you. That's when you know something's a cult, when the members treat you that way. Um, and I've been part of groups that are, like I've said before in the past, that are very good and I've been part of groups that are very, very bad and very cult-like. So I've seen both sides of it. Um, and so I'm trying to make sure that this group in particular doesn't end up like the other groups that I've seen. I want people to know that we're here trying to serve Satan and we're trying to serve the demonic gods. We're not here trying to manipulate people or trying to tell people that our way is the only way or the true way. It's just one way. That's it. You know, it's just one approach. And we don't speak for anyone else but ourselves. We don't try to act as if we speak for all Satanists or all satanic groups or whatever. There is no universally accepted holy text in Satanism. There is no universally accepted religious organization in Satanism, despite what people say. It's always been that way. It's always been an individual path. And the tradition has varied from country to country and coven to coven and organization to organization. And anybody who tells you any different is lying to you. Okay, I'm ready to go on with the next one.
Absolutely. Cool. Okay, so the next question is one that I think I'm mostly going to pass off to you because you have stronger opinions about this than I do. But what's your opinions about demonolatry? This is a question that Brother Nero has been asked a couple of times. And from my point of view, it was where I started my path. And it's something that I don't use as a framework anymore, but in its intentions and in its philosophy and practice, it is quite it's earnest, it's genuine, it's not, you know, it's not something which is being put up just to, you know, just to sell merchandise. It does seem to be a dedication to the gods in its own way. There are some parts of it that I don't agree with, some parts that don't really resonate with me anymore, but it has its place. But I know that Brother Nero does have some opinions about it.
Yeah, my opinions are that the people that practice demonolatry, the general practitioners, seem to be very genuine in their respect for the demons and stuff, and I respect that, and I respect the earnestness with which they approach their tradition. Now, the founder of some forms of demonolatry, S. Conley, I have issues with because of some of the things she says in her books and some of the way she approaches things, but I don't go into that because I don't want to. The only people that I regularly criticize are atheistic Satanists that use Satanism to promote their political or social agendas. I hate that. I hate the Church of Satan and I hate the Satanic Temple. I think they're con artists, and that's what I think. And that's my opinion. As far as other religious satanic groups, I try to stay away from it because the whole point of doing this is not to cause drama. The whole point of doing this is to bring people together. So I don't want to beat up on any particular author or group. I would just say that I disagree with S. Conley in some things, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, absolutely. I would agree with you there. I think that there are valid issues with it in a lot of cases.
Are you ready for the next one?
Yes. So the next question is, what is it like to be a Satanist? Which is broad question, and I think it really depends on the individual Satanist. I think everybody will give you a different answer to that question. For me, it's incredible. It can feel isolating at times. It can even feel dangerous at times because you never really know. I sometimes like to joke that someone asking you that whether or not you're a Satanist is a bit like laying a primed grenade between the two of you and smiling and seeing what you're going to do with it. But it's ultimately, if it's the path for you, it's very rewarding, even if it is isolating, even if sometimes you're a little bit wary of what people how people might react, or if it might affect your work or your reputation. That ultimately doesn't matter when you are truly called to it, when you have formed a relationship with these gods. It's spiritually rewarding. And for me, it came out of, I was largely atheistic for most of my life, and it came out of the blue. It turned my world upside down. But once I had gotten over the shock of suddenly finding myself in this space that I'd never expected to find myself, it was shocking how much it felt like home in the way that nothing else ever had. So I would say that would be my ultimate answer to that question.
Yeah, I would say it's a hard path. I would say it really is a hard path, but it is easier than it has been than it ever has been because of the exposure of people like the Satanic Temple. For all the things I say negatively about them, the one thing they have contributed to people is the fact that they've made people more aware and more tolerant towards the idea of Satanism, if not Satanism itself. So I think it's easier than it ever has been, but it is a difficult path because, like I said, you're always going to be seen as the weirdo, the outcast, the person that is always the outsider in most cases. But you have to get used to it. I mean, you just get used to it. If you really believe in Satan, you just accept it as a badge of honor and you move on. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't sacrifice my relationship with Satan for anything. Not any amount of money, not any amount of power, not any amount of anything, sex or anything else, because it's just that important to me. It means everything to me. And I would die for my religion happily. That's how serious I am about it. So anyway, but yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it is not easy. And if you're coming to this with the attitude of playing games and stuff like that, you won't find happiness here, at least not in this ministry. You might find it somewhere else, but not here. Anyway, I think that does it for me on that question.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And one thing I will also say to anyone who is new to Satanism, who's listening, it can feel, even within the Satanic community, it can feel very, very isolating. To not necessarily, you might sort of feel like the people around you are sort of the same, but at the same time so different in such fundamental ways that sometimes it might seem like you're kind of the odd duck out no matter where you go. But that's why finding a group where you can relate to people and find practice that works for you, and people who get it, people who you can talk to and bounce ideas off of and learn from, that's why that's so important to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's something that's caused us. I might want to mention this while we're on here as well. You know, we had said in the past that we were only going to work with people in England and we weren't really going to do remote memberships. But after talking to so many people, we've changed our mind about that because so many people are just looking to commune with others and to make contact with other people that are serious, that we're going to open our membership up uh, to basically a virtual membership for like candidates and stuff, because there are so many people that are interested but can't be present. So we're changing our policy on that. We'll be trying to come up with a online curriculum or some kind of uh, curriculum that we can teach people and have online classes or something like that eventually. But we kind of have to work on it because it's a decision that I made in the last few days to open it up to non-local members or non to people who can't make it, because I just think there's a desperate need for it, and I think people really want it, and all they really want is to be around people that actually believe in Satan. They don't care. They don't care that it's virtual. They'd rather have that than not have anything at all. So I think as a ministry, we kind of have an obligation to make sure that happens for them. And by the way, for all of you that are here, we do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to come listen to us speak about Satanism. And we do realize there are a number of places you could be, there are a number of people you could be listening to, and there are certainly a number of satanic organizations you could be listening to. So we appreciate your time today. All right, you ready to go on to the next question?
Absolutely. So the next question we have on the list is, can you still be a Satanist even if you were baptized at the Catholic Church from birth? And I know this is a specific question that we got, but I would actually even extend this to, we've seen and had people ask about any number of different religions, specifically Abrahamic religions, and people will say, I was raised Christian, Catholic, I was raised Muslim, and I feel a little bit weird, self-conscious, even afraid, or like I'm not going to be accepted by Satan, by the demonic gods. And that's something that a lot of people worry about. And yes, absolutely, you can still be a diabolist, a Satanist, if you were baptized into a different religion. I think that it matters what's in your heart and what, how you're approaching the religion and the demonic gods is what matters. And for people who feel that they have spiritual baggage from anything that they've been baptized into, or anything that's been, spiritually sort of attached to them, as it were, that's essentially why the things like the Black Mass or blasphemy exists, so that people have a specific ritual practice that they can use to cleanse themselves of any past associations.
Yeah, I think it's very important for people that have been raised in an Abrahamic religious tradition to undergo satanic baptism just to cleanse themselves. It's not as a mockery of the Christian baptism per se, but just as a way of giving yourself a fresh start. And I think it's always good to do that in front of witnesses, in front of the gods, and as an organized group. So I think if you have the opportunity to do that, you should. I think anybody that gets a chance to experience that is worth it. So especially if you're coming from that background, it's very important to do a public affirmation, of your faith. I think. At least that's my opinion. You need to be cleansed of that background. All right, you ready for the next question?
Yes. So this is one which is more for you, I think, than I can comment on, which is, what are your thoughts about the Yazidis? And I should probably actually let you explain more what the Yazidis are, because I have a very, very basic understanding that they are a Middle Eastern kind of related to the Muslim culture, in the same way that Satanism is related to Christianity, in that they are also devil worshippers, as it were, but in a different way, and are devoted to Iblis as a form of Satan instead of the more Western version. But Nero can explain it much better than I just did.
Yeah, well, my opinions of the Yazidis are that they're a form of Satanism, and but they're kind of like an offshoot of Islam and all those different things, and they're persecuted a lot by people in the area, the Muslims, I mean, and the Christians, and basically they believe that um, Lucifer, or Melekteus, as he's called, the peacock angel, or the peacock king. Um, he is basically the equivalent of Lucifer, and they believe that Lucifer rules over this world, and he was given reign over the world by God, and that he is not an enemy of God per se. He is doing a duty, keeping the world running and kind of keeping things on track. And so while they're on this earth, they feel obligated to worship Melekteus. And they believe that Melekteus will be redeemed and be with God in the end, that he kind of fell because of his pride, kind of thing. So it's a Lucifer story, a variation of a Lucifer story. Now, the way the Yazidis play into our tradition is one of our sacred texts is the Al Jawah. And the way that we honor Melektos in our Melekteos in our tradition is that we honor him honor him as a representation of Lucifer. So it's one of the names we use to call Lucifer. And during summer rituals, we will use a peacock statue or a peacock painting to represent one of Lucifer's aspects, and that's how we do it. Um, we're going to be doing a summer ritual this year, and we're probably going to have Julia custom paint a peacock painting that we're going to place on the altar as something for veneration. That's how we do it. Um, and we honor him in that way. We honor Lucifer through the peacock as a symbol. But anyway, But the main thing to know about the Yazidis is their religion is so convoluted and changes so much that since the time of the transmission of the Aljawa, they've even changed their own traditions. They can't even remember the origins of some of their beliefs. Like they're not able to use like the name for lettuce because it sounds too much like the one of the names of Satan. So they don't want to disrespect Satan by using the inappropriate name for lettuce. To thinking that they're calling him. It's strange things like that. And also I would add that they don't use Satan's name properly. They do it kind of like the way the Jews do Jehovah. They will actually um, not spell out the full name of Satan. They'll put dashes in place of letters for his name because they think spelling out the name completely is disrespectful. Go ahead.
I didn't know about the lettuce thing.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
They have very strange beliefs.
It's interesting those the little nuances of different cultures and languages like that. How certain things can have such strong meanings in different cultures that seem absolutely bizarre in different contexts. That just honestly fascinates me.
Yeah, I that was the other thing I was going to mention that Azazel's bride says here that they don't wear blue because it's an insult. That's his sacred color, so it's an insult to him. They don't they don't wear blue. Anyway, continue on with the next question.
Absolutely. So this is one I believe people have asked of you, and tell us about your books that are available outside of the Shadow Path Journal. I know that you have at least one.
Yeah, I well, you can get my book, Satanism: A Beginner's Guide to the Religious Worship of Satan and Demons, if you want to get that book. And I do only have one. I know it seems like I have two. What happened was I was going to release a book on Shadow Path Diabolism, and I decided to not release the book, and I forgot to tell the Amazon that I was going to cancel the release of the book. And so Amazon put it up as if I released the book on the release date, but I forgot to tell them I wasn't releasing it. So it's listed as being available. It's not available because it isn't finished. And so you see the cover up there, but the book was never released. And that was my fault because I forgot to tell Amazon and they didn't tell their distributors. So they have it listed places where it's not actually available. So yeah, so that's that. But anyway, so yeah, you could pick up Satanism, a beginner's guide to the religious worship of Satan and demons, to give you an idea of what I believe. But I will say that my beliefs have evolved quite considerably in the 10 years since I've written that book. I think that's very important to point out. Another thing, just before I move on to a different subject, I think it's important to note that as we practice Satanism, as we get more understanding about him, your beliefs can change. And there are some people that will beat you up and say, well, over here, you used to believe this and you used to believe that. And so why have your views changed? Because I learned more than I used to know 10 years ago. I've had more ritual experiences. I've had more spiritual experiences. And I learned that I was wrong about some things and that I had beliefs that were not quite accurate. And Satan teaches us new things and reveals things to us. And so if your religion doesn't evolve, if it doesn't change, then you're not really practicing it much, you know? And so people will look down on me because they say, well, your views have changed. Well, if your views don't change, that means your religion is dead and you're not practicing. So that's not something to be proud of. You know, I
Yeah.
don't understand that where people take pride in being the same all the time, never learning anything new and never being able to say, I made a mistake. I misunderstood something. I misinterpreted something. I used to believe foolish things. You know, there's nothing wrong with saying I've learned something and I've evolved. So don't ever let anybody make you feel bad if you change your mind about something you believe or you have a spiritual experiences that corrects your beliefs. Okay? It's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen people say that to you that, oh, your beliefs have changed. You're saying things now that you said something different 10 years ago. And it's like, well, yes, duh. People learn. People have experiences that change the way they interact with the world and their knowledge, and they give you a new perspective. It's like you don't still believe in Father Christmas, do you? Because you evolved and you learned that that's not a thing, and I don't see why anything should be different than that. And saying that someone can't evolve and can't change their beliefs is stupid and, quite frankly, incurious. And I don't understand why people think that that's the gotcha that they are putting it as, but it really isn't.
Yeah, well, the other thing is that's so unsatanic too. That, oh, I never evolve, I never learn, I never change, I never grow in wisdom or understanding. That's not even close to satanic. That's not
Well,
the
right,
satanic
exactly.
attitude, you know? And if you think like that, if you really genuinely believe that, you're not much of a Satanist, I gotta say. You know? That's what I say about it.
Exactly. It's not exactly celebrating knowledge and free thought and the gift of the black flame, is it? It's just sort of like, yep, this is your mindset and you can't change it.
Yeah, it's Julia, by the way. Somebody was asking your name.
Oh
Julia.
yes, yes. My name is Julia. Hello, everybody. Um, I mean, you can call me Juliet if you like. I'll answer to pretty much everything. But yes, my name in the ministry is Julia Blair.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I think that was the end of the prepared questions that we have for this week. Does anybody have any specific questions that we can answer for the question and answer session?
We have a few that have already been posted in the chat. Let me just have a quick look. I tend to lose track of them with the comments that have been put in. We have one. Oh yes, Azazel's Bride says, "How did the outreach in Birmingham go?" Which I would love to answer because I was out there with Brother Mo, and it was good. It was not the best day for an outreach, so we had slightly less engagement than we might usually have, but we still had some pretty good engagement. We had lots of people coming up to take flyers, lots of people come up to talk to us. We had the usual smattering of, we always have the same sort of distribution of different types of people. So we'll always have a couple evangelists who come up to us and tell us how we're, misguided and going to hell and whatever. We always have a few people who are just genuinely confused but interested. We often have people who are atheists who come up and are trying, kind of just trying to understand. We have a few people who clearly think we're nuts. It's very funny. You'll see people who are walking by who are looking at the table. I'll make eye contact and smile at them, and they'll just really quickly look away, or they'll just sort of stand there, and you can see their mouths form the words "Devil's Mark Ministries." And it's really funny just to watch them. They're too scared to come up, but they're just standing there like, what on earth is this? We had some interactions we had a very long and slightly frustrating debate with a Muslim. We had we got to talk to several young people who were very interested in it and seemed very enthusiastic to learn about what we were presenting. And one of them was saying, "Oh, I always wanted to read the Satanic Bible," and I said, "You should. It's got some interesting ideas, although you might occasionally feel that the author is a bit of an arsehole, which, in my opinion, is natural." And we also, towards the end, I think the very last interaction we had was this little boy. He can't have been older than 12. Runs up to us and he looks at us and he goes, "Are you guys Satanists?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he goes, "Hail Satan!" And I'm like, "Yes, absolutely." And he grins and he runs off back to his parents. It was hilarious and honestly one of the best ways I've ever had an outreach end. So that was very entertaining.
Yeah, that makes it all worthwhile when you have to put up with the Muslims and the more crazy people.
But yeah, there are
Yeah,
always
go ahead.
sorry.
Sorry.
No, there are always good reactions. There are weirdos. We've had some really creepy, like, people, the creepy evangelists, the ones who come up and are all smiles and like, "Oh, God is so loving, he's so loving that if you don't obey his every whim, he's going to cast you into eternal hellfire." And it's just like, those ones really creep me out. But to contrast that, we have some amazing discussions with some people who, have some really unique perspectives. We've had people from all walks of life come up and talk to us. We've had, people who are some of the strangest people who come up to us and really enthusiastic about what we're doing. Like there was a guy who was a Sikh who came up to us and was like, I really like that you're out here promoting a religion that's not one of the mainstream religions and making it more visible, because it's difficult for us who are not, one of the big three religions, as it were, to be recognized as legitimate. So we always get some good stuff, and it's always good to get out there and talk to people and kind of break down stigma, let people know we exist, let people know who Satan is and who the demonic gods are, and good stuff like that, honestly. So it was a good successful outreach, I would say, even though it was raining.
I think one of the things that one of the things people misunderstand about our outreach program is that it's intended to raise awareness of the ministry. We don't we do a lot of things that people don't realize we do because we don't promote them. We're not like a lot of these Facebook groups online that, oh, we're doing this and we did this, and we don't take pictures of our rituals and things that we do, because our whole philosophy is, if it's about Satan, you shouldn't brag about it. You shouldn't, if your ritual is about Satan and it's about the demons, you shouldn't be taking pictures of it, putting it on your Facebook page, right? So there's a lot of stuff we do that people don't know about. But in terms of the outreach, that's what it's for, to raise public awareness. And that's what the magazine is for. That's why we promote the magazine. That's why we promote the outreaches and put pictures up, because those are the two things that we do to raise awareness of our tradition. Everything else we do is private and we keep to ourselves. We try to help people when we can. Uh, we try to do services for people when they need them, if we can. But we don't brag about those things, because it's supposed to be between you and Satan. It's not supposed to be for show. You don't put your offerings on YouTube and Instagram. I know some people don't agree with that, and some people think it's perfectly fine. In our ministry, we don't think it's fine. We think it's disrespectful. And it shows that you're more interested in promoting yourself, and it's more of an ego thing. Look at me, instead of a belief in Satan. Anyway, go ahead, Julia, if you're ready.
Yes, absolutely. And also, just as I've just noticed, there was a small follow-up question to the question about the outreach and did we meet many Satanists? We don't generally, unfortunately, we don't generally meet people who are already Satanists and Diabolists, but we hope that by being out there and hopefully having some of the people who took sneaky pictures of us post them on social media, we will have people directed to the ministry who might benefit from the things that we offer. The next question that I have on here is one from Aries Rising, which is talking about she worships Tyr and Anubis and worships Satan as the all. Is this compatible? And this is probably one that Brother Nero is more equipped to answer. But I would, from my understanding, from what I've learned, belief in one pantheon does not necessarily preclude belief in Satan as a deity. And I think some people will see Satan as another face of certain gods. For instance, some people see Satan as another face of Odin or of Carnunus or Pan, those kinds of deities that are pre-Christian. So I would not necessarily say it's incompatible.
Yeah, I would say that, like, for me, I see Satan as Odin. Another form of Satan is Odin to me. And I know there are other Satanists that feel that way as well. So, and to me, I associate Tyr in particular with Abaddon, um, with Abaddon, as some people refer to him. Um, so that's just me, and there are other people that make those associations. But again, that's where we try to explain that we leave space for people to practice their individual practices within their private rituals, because some people don't see those associations, or some people don't feel comfortable with them. But I personally have always associated Satan with Odin. So heathenism has never been a problem for me. I don't see a contradiction. And in fact, some of the principles and philosophies of heathenism are very similar to Satanism. So I don't see a contradiction, although I'm sure there's some Odinists out there who would have a problem with me. But, to each his own. But yeah, as far as Anubis, I don't really have an opinion on what demon or if he's associated with another demon. I used to have an interest in him when I was younger, and I've always found him to be one of the more interesting Egyptian deities. But I don't have an opinion about whether he's associated with Satan or not because I really haven't worked with him, so I can't say to you with any degree of knowledge or certainty about that. And so I don't want to give you an opinion that's based on speculation. Okay, you ready for the next one?
Yes, absolutely. The next one is actually something I just want to put up here. It's not necessarily a question, but a comment that we got from Marie Ravensol when we were talking about is Satan about evil. And sorry about that. She says she thinks people often mistake evil for intense. And I think that's an interesting comment because I think it possibly brings up a good point that like Satan and demonic gods are not fluffy white light types of entities by any means. From what I've learned and from a lot of what Brother Nero has taught me is they do care for their children, but they'll also give you a kick up the bum if you're being an idiot. And that energy can be very intense and there is a darkness to it. And I wouldn't say it's evil in that it's malicious, but I will say that it's not always gentle.
Yeah, I would agree with that. People do mistake intensity for evil, and I would also say that um, their presence when it's very strong, when it's manifest very strongly, um, can make people afraid. So they equate that with evil because I've gone into ritual chambers where the presence of the demonic is so strong that you have to go back out of the room. I mean, I remember there were a couple of times when I was practicing with the coven I used to work with in England that we'd just walk into the ritual room prepared to do a ritual, and we'd have to bow our head and leave because there was something in that room. And we had to wait until they were done, whatever was in there, before we could even do a ritual. And people would just come, they would walk out of the room and back up and say, "Can't go in there right now. There's something in there. We have to wait for it to leave," you know, because it was clear that it was in there, it was its space, and whatever it was doing, eh, we had no place in it. You need to get out. And we had that happen before, several times, in fact, where people would just walk out of the room and bow their head and go, "Nope, can't go in there now. Somebody's in there," and that was it. And we would wait till the energy cleared out, and then we would go in there and do our ritual. I know that sounds strange, but that's the way we would do it. And that's another thing. Um, their presence is so strong. When these Satanists say, "I would never kneel before Satan," again, I doubt whether many of them have really had a genuine experience with a demon because I've had experiences where the presence is so strong that you have no choice but to bow your head. You feel almost forced or obligated to because the power is so strong. And I've seen people that swore they would never get down on their face before the demons because the presence was so strong. So that's what I'm telling you. People that talk like that are people that probably never had a successful demonic experience or a real strong one anyway. That's my opinion, but it's just my opinion. Anyways, I'm ready for the next one if you got another one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to say that sometimes one of the things that convinced me that I wasn't just sort of imagining things was some of the times that I would have these experiences just once or twice. There's this sort of not necessarily intellectual, but almost primal feeling of fear. Essentially, is the only way to describe it. In that something inside you knows that you're basically touching something that you are not used to being in contact with, and that is kind of alien to you and is very, very powerful. And I think a lot of people might mistake that for evil if you get that fear, but it's not necessarily something to be feared. Not all the time, I would say.
Yeah, and by the way, that energy that you're talking about, Aries rising, is something that it's you can tell when people don't like to talk about this, but we refer to we refer to like possession instead of saying possession. We refer to it as channeling, because most of the time when a spirit comes through, it's a willing channel. They're not being possessed against their will. That's a whole different issue. Now, demons can forcibly possess people and take over and make them do stuff that they don't want to do. But generally, to their children or to Satan's children, he doesn't do that. It's by choice. Somebody's made a choice to be a channel. But when there's a genuine channeling happening, you can feel that aura around the person, and there's no doubt that they're channeling something real, because you can feel that energy coming off of them. It's a rare thing, a true channeling. It rarely ever happens. And most of the time when somebody says, I've channeled spirits, or I've communicated with somebody who's channeling spirits, I have a lot of doubts and I question them, because most people are faking it in order to con people out of money or sex or whatever. So it's rare to find somebody who genuinely channels. But when you do, you can't mistake it for anything else, because you'll feel that aura around them that you feel when you feel a genuine demonic presence. And it radiates out from them like in waves of energy. And it's, like you said, unmistakable. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up for anybody if you might know somebody who's claiming to channel, always look for that. Always look for the energy that they can't fake. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got another question here from Rob Stanton, which is about the Old Testament and New Testament God. So what do we think about some Christians saying the Old Testament God is Satan? Oh, sorry, I misread that question. The Old Testament God is Satan because he's so harsh, and the New Testament God is the good God. I have not heard that. What I've heard about it, about Old Testament versus New Testament. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, honestly. And to be fair, I don't have a lot of deep spiritual conversations with Christians. I used to have a friend who would joke that New Testament God is Old Testament God after he got his meds right. But I've never heard someone say that the Old Testament God is Satan, and I fully believe it. But that is a very, very Gnostic point of view. That's interesting. Brother Nero, have you heard this one before? Do you have comments about this?
Well, I've heard that. I've heard Gnostics kind of say that Jehovah is the real Satan and Satan's the liberator. That Jehovah is the really they have a name for it, and my mind's going blank. It's what is it? The demiurge, and it's basically he's the evil entity that imprisoned mankind, and he's the true evil, the true devil of creation, not Satan. Satan is the liberator. But what I will say, for me personally, I believe in the Christian God, and I know a lot of Satanists don't, but I believe in the Christian God. I believe he's a parasitic entity that pretends to have more power than he does. And I think what he's done is the Old Testament is him showing his colors true, what he really is, what he really thinks about mankind. And then he decided, maybe I need to put on a mask and hide who I really am. So I'll do this Jesus thing and make it seem as though I'm a nice God and I'm a peaceful God, and I'm really not that bad. Just trust me, believe in me. I think that's what he did. He basically put a mask on to hide who he really is. But when you talk to Christians, you'll see that they're evil and vindictive and nasty people, just like the God they worship. I believe when Christians say I have the Holy Spirit, what they're really saying is they're possessed by the Spirit of Jehovah. And you can see that in their character, because when they truly have what they call the Holy Spirit, they're as evil and judgmental as he is, because they're possessed with his spirit. That's what I think personally. So I don't have any shame about acknowledging the Christian God, but I think he's a pretender. I think he's everything that the Christians claim Satan is the Christian God what he really is. That's my opinion. Anyway.
Yeah, I think first of all, what you said about the Bible presenting Jesus as or the Christian God presenting Jesus as this, oh crap, maybe I need to change people's perspective of me. Here's a really cool dude that you can all love and relate to. That is a bit spooky, because it really has the same energy of like someone giving you flowers the day after they've just slapped you across the face to try and make everything better. Not a fan of that energy. But also, I think that saying, outside of the Gnostic perspective, I think that saying the Old Testament God is Satan because he's such a harsh punisher is a bit of a cop-out, because, you know, the whole thing about the Christian God that a lot of Christians will say is that he's wrathful. If you cross him, he'll strike you down, he'll kill your children, he'll turn you into a pillar of salt if you do anything even slightly to disobey him. And I think that is still, you know, the threat of hellfire is still there, even with the New Testament. You know, it's not gone away. It's just put on a prettier face, as it were.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a mask that he wears. And one of the ways you can tell when somebody's a real Christian is because they take on the attributes of him. They take on the judgmental nastiness, and they're very nasty people. Christians will put on this fake smile like they actually care about people, but what you'll find is they only care about people if they think they can convert you. They only care about people if they think they can win you over to their church. And you'll see this like when they go volunteer to like paint people's houses, and they'll volunteer to mow people's lawn. They'll only do that if they think they have a chance at converting you. Once they realize you're not going to go over to their way of thinking, they will forget all about you, and they'll act like you didn't exist, and they won't help you. And they'll leave that elderly old woman with nobody helping her with her yard because she didn't go along with the program. She didn't lick Jesus's ass, you know. So we're not going to help you. Their love is conditional, and they become very, very evil very quickly. Don't don't let anybody tell you any different, because they are assholes just like the God they worship.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, that brings up a good point that the Muslim guy that we were talking to at the outreach was talking about. I was saying how Satanism is about free will and personal sovereignty. And he was saying about, oh, well, the Abrahamic religions, you have free will. You know, you have the free will to do what you want. And like, you know, you can either choose to be sinful or not. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's not really a choice, is it? It's the same kind of thing as saying you can either choose to give me money or I'll burn your house down. You've got free will there, and it's not really, is it? It's not really free will. It's conditional. It's not caring. It's not authentically that. It's conditional, and it's based on obedience. Essentially, it's based on kowtowing.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have any more questions, or is that it?
I'm just quickly looking through the comments. I think that's about it for the questions. Bear with me for a second. If anybody else has any other questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat, and I will grab them in just a second. I believe that sums it up for what we've got on the chat at the moment. I think that I think that about sums it up. And I'd like to say, as usual, the ultimate goal of the ministry is to create community, to reach out to people, to kind of just create a space where people who are serious about their worship of Satan, the demonic gods, as a part of their life, as an integral part of their daily existence, essentially, have somewhere where they can come to worship that's not about, you know, it's not about being a living God. It's not about putting on a show. It's not about pouring fake blood over yourself and putting pigs' heads on spikes or whatever. It's about actually worshiping the gods and living the religion. And if that is something that resonates with you, please feel free to join us on Facebook. Please feel free to visit our website. You're always welcome to write us, and you're always welcome to join us on one of these live streams. We hold them every 2 weeks, and we will do question and answers pretty much after every one.
Yeah, and I just want to point out again that we do this about 4:30 p.m. Central Time. Sometimes we're a little bit late, so if we're not here right at 4:30, we will be here shortly after that. We try to be on time, but sometimes it just can't be helped, and we're a few minutes late. So even if we're not here, just wait around. We will be here every other Sunday. Okay. And And if you have any questions, you can always write to us at our website at the email addresses that are there. And we're more than happy to help anybody who's genuine about it. We're more than happy to answer any serious questions. And I just want to also say, if you know anybody who is interested in Satanism or Shadow Path Diabolism, please let them know about our virtual outreach, and let them know that they can come ask questions here every other week. I think that about does it for today. Satan be with you guys. And like I said, we'll be here to help wherever we can.
Yes.
The week after next.
Absolutely. Satanic blessings to all of you. Thank you so much for everybody who participated in the chat and all your great, lovely comments and your questions. And we will see you in 2 weeks' time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye now.